Good morning, LinkedIn. Welcome to Let's Build Daily. I'm your host, Chris Carolyn. Happy HubSpot Hump Day. Hope you're having a great week. Excited for a fun twofer tomorrow with Stuart Malcolm and Max Cohen in the morning and the afternoon, respectively. And I've been doing some work in HubSpot to help manage the show. Had a lot of great feedback. And also some interest in like understanding how this all works. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think LinkedIn Live is an underrated channel right now, and content creation, distribution, creation and distribution at the same time. So it's a very interesting tool, let's say, that is pretty unique in that way, in my opinion. That's, on the surface, looks like it's free to use. And I'll talk about today some of the costs involved, not as expensive as you might think. But I think the channel itself and the approach to doing live sessions and the expectations, compared to like, a big campaign around a webinar or some other kind of event, there's a lot of, I think, mindset differences that will hold you back if you don't make that shift. So I wanted to start just from the basics of creating an event and kind of show you my setup. So I'll share my screen here. And first of all, thanks to George B. Thomas for turning me on to Toby, which is like a bookmarks management tool for Chrome that I started using as soon as he showed it to me. And that's how this is often where I start. I open up the tab and I've got Let's Build Info on the top. And most of the time I am clicking on this events. So this brings you, again, a lot of the challenge to doing this, especially every day, is it's not designed to be every day. LinkedIn itself is not designed to be a live event platform. So understanding the easiest ways to do this on a regular basis took some time to learn, especially, what's cool is you can do this on your phone or on desktop pretty easily, but there are different buttons you have to press to be able to do it on your phone versus when you are on desktop. So I ended up bookmarking this page, which should be the same for everybody, my network dash manager events, because it's got the create button right here. So we're going to click on create. But I think that you'll see that as a running theme, like the value of the outcome, right? It can be easy to let, kind of the challenge of getting it done and overthink like, oh, how can I spend time on this every day? Like, for me, the value of the outcome of creation and distribution at the same time has been very powerful and worth it. So for a number of reasons. So we're going to click on create here. And again, I started doing this before I had any kind of, setup in HubSpot or any kind of, for me, this organic, like in the moment, live thing. Like, I'm a big advocate of, and I love the Lauren Michaels quote, like, they don't go live on Saturday nights because they're ready. They go on live because it's 11:30 p.m. on Saturday night, right? So especially when it comes to content creation. The live setting can kind of reduce maybe some production, expectations. But also understand that there is a ton of value in, it's a lot easier to be authentic, with a little less preparation than normal. This is where it's, your comfort level can really drive what you can do here. But if you can give yourself some permission to kind of be yourself and kind of think about this mechanism differently, understanding it's not about the live viewers, right? If I was worried about that, this wouldn't work for me at all, because I can't, you're about to see like the posts, like there has to be a post with it. So I can't create 5 days, well, I could. We're about to create 2 for the first time. Let me just get into it. So I click on cover image and bring in the old faithful here, which was built 95% with AI, and I'll show that process in a moment. We have event type, online or in person, LinkedIn audio event, LinkedIn live, or external event link. We're going to do LinkedIn live. And then I actually want to do for tomorrow, let's build daily. Actually, we're going to do let's build happily with Max Cohen. And I started prepping this over here. I did. So I'll get back to that. Do event lead management. Management and reporting. Tomorrow at 1:30. And I'm Central Time, and we are going for an hour. And this is where you got to build some building blocks, especially for the recurring stuff. When it's not a guest or not a series, I'm usually, typing this in as I think about it. I started off with a templated version that really didn't tell you what the event was about at all, and ended up doing it more organic as I create it. But in this case, I have some HubSpot records that we'll look at more in detail in a little bit. I actually want to, we'll do that one. That's a good. So I think this was the second time we did this. All right. So I've got some of these fields set up in HubSpot. This is a custom object, the Sessinge object from Event Happily that I'm using to accomplish this. So description from last time, gonna bring it over here. Max and Chris will continue building an event management and strategy in HubSpot, focusing on lead management and still ROI reporting. And we'll say using event happily. And speakers, got myself and Max. This is where you start to understand like this mechanism, right? So now this completes the details for the event, but we're not done. But this is the kind of thing where if I don't include Max here, then he doesn't get, the notification. There's an acceptance that happens. So usually when you're involving multiple people, any bit of help is in terms of coordinating promotion goes a long way. So, and I'm just going to back up real quick. What's cool is as I write text for each thing, being able to go back and forth and not lose information is helpful. And now, again, I'm realizing that I usually have a different cover when I'm with Max. So I'm going to fix that now. Welcome to the process. There we go, this guy. Right. This is why the whole next level of this show today is about how we institute a little bit more project management into the process. But we've got Thursday, tomorrow, 1:30 with Max. So we're good there. Share my thoughts. I'll bring in the event description is usually not first person if I've got somebody else on the show. But here, let's say this is where we're tagging. You actually can't tag anybody in the description. The hashtags don't really work. So this is where understanding what the event description is doing for you and what the post is doing for you is important. This is where, like, maybe over time and with the right pre-planning, some more thought goes into the copy here. But a part of doing this every day is say, like, hey, what's the value of really trying to differentiate significantly between the two? So starting from the event description, bringing it over here, and then kind of bringing it into first person voice in more of an announcement kind of fashion, and less event description is some of what I think about here. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, Max Cohen is finally forcing me to talk about leads. Damn him. We will continue building an event management strategy in HubSpot. Hashtag HubSpot. Focusing on lead management and ROI reporting using event at Happily. Let's build. And hashtags. So even though they're winding down hashtags in many ways, this is really the only way I've found that you can actually follow, somebody's content or a series or, whatever. That's still available. And I'll show what that looks like and how you get there. But for this one, let's build daily. Let's build happily. Built with HubSpot and event management. Okay. So, short and sweet today. the value of doing it on the show. I take less time to do it, and that's a good thing. And now I'm going to, this I feel like is new. When I first started doing this, I did not have the schedule for later option when it came to events. I could do it for normal posts, but not for event posts. So this probably changes the way that I approach this. If I can schedule this for later, then I can plan ahead. Just know that, and maybe I'll test this. I don't think the event will complete being published until the post actually goes out, is how I would think it works. Because really, until I hit this post button, the event does not exist for anybody to attend. So in here, we have a link to view the post, a reminder to send a message to the speakers asking them to confirm their participation. And we can compose this message. I usually don't do this, but what I often do is I'll click on view post just so I can grab the link to the event, right, in the URL. And then I might share it, directly with some people. Certainly, if I start, to do this process, or to make this a part of the process, I'm creating, this Happily session. I have, right now I've been using the meeting link because that's, actually that's the post link. All right, so it's post URL. This is a rich text field. And that's something that's interesting to key in on. Like, so another fun part of the process, if you will, is noticing the difference between these URLs and when you're sharing, like sometimes it does a lot of redirection, before event, during event, and after event. Often different things are happening. So I grab that first because that's a way that brings people right into the post, without redirection. And I'll post this usually in Sprocketeer, somewhere. There's a social content channel. Sometimes if it's more training focused, like today, there's a training channel. Maybe I'm sharing it in messages. But this comments is what brings up this post, right? Now, if I click the share button, since I'm doing it every day, I'm usually not adding to calendar because I already have a time block in my calendar to support not only blocking the time off for myself before the event is made, but also inviting other people to that time block. If we're sharing, we have the options to invite, repost a feed, send in a message, copy link. If we copy the link, we'll see that it shows us something different. And I'll do that over here. And that's where this meeting link is intended to be. Like, this is the place you go to watch it, right? In this use case, they designed for is like a Zoom link. And you'll see that this has theater at the end, right? So that's the kind of the live, view that only really is active prior to the event. But if we go there now, it redirects you to the comments, like to the other link, right? So it really only matters during the show itself. But that's why you might see some different behavior, and understanding how the different URLs work can be super helpful. And you'll learn it the hard way if you don't try to understand it up front. If we're clicking on invite, I usually don't use this unless for special occasions or something I really, really think is going to be important to the other person they might want to watch. And you can do up to 100 at one time here. This is a part of the process. Like maybe I get some more exposure if I did this every time, but kind of the whole point of the regular reoccurring show is the people that start to want to engage regularly, like will know when to show up. So I try to use this selectively, right? It's also super clunky. So if I were to include this, it just takes a long time. There's not a lot of ways to filter effectively, right? It won't show you your whole network to begin with. So I've done some things like if I, let's say if I look up HubSpot, right, and show results, right, if I'm interested in finding some specific people there, I might do that, especially like on some of the unboxing episodes that I did, getting some of the product people aware of that. And that's created some cool new relationships. So I use that sparingly. And again, that where it's different from a webinar, again, this is daily activity versus once a month. We're planning a whole campaign around this, right? I don't really care about this attendee number at all because it has nothing to do with whether they actually showed up or not, whether they saw it or not. Maybe it impacts some of the discoverability a little bit, but this is like the last thing, because I'm doing this every day. Most of the time I get more people actually attending than are listed here almost every time, right? So you can't really correlate it with any other numbers. So don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. And I would, if you're going to do like a regular series, it's probably one of the least valuable metrics, at your disposal. So as we look at manage here, we can do some edits. I'm usually not doing, any of this. Here, I'd like to experiment more now that I've got some results in HubSpot. I could actually experiment, but reposting, like, and if I am planning out to the future, like most of these I'm posting day of, a couple hours before, sometimes 30 minutes before. And that's where understanding how LinkedIn is working to distribute it. Because if you have ever gotten a notification, sometimes it goes out, before. Sometimes it's 5 minutes before. Sometimes it's 45 minutes before. Sometimes it's 30 minutes into it. Sometimes it's 7 minutes in. Like I just noticed this with Sprocketier last week, or the Sprocket Pod. It's 7 minutes in and it says was live, right? And you click in and they're like, mid show, like you'd expect them to be if you're understanding when. So this is where a big part of this is understanding what is in your control and what isn't. And if you can find a way to care a lot less about what isn't under your control, this will go a lot better for you. Not to say we're not paying attention to results at all, but there's definitely some stuff that you can impact, versus others. That's where I'm taking some chances here with the distribution that is very much not under my control, um, and taking the time to understand how people are connecting with me, whether it's because of the content, is an important part of this process. So we've got the LinkedIn event created. Let's see. What else? And so on our details tab, here is just speakers, and you can see Max is pending here until he accepts. And we have the about, which usually I'll have a little more than this. But since this is a series, and again, lots of factors go into thinking about how to do this. I'm not sure. I usually have hashtag. I will often have hashtags here, but I don't think it impacts anything. Or I haven't seen it do that yet. Like if I search for the hashtag, if it's not in the main post, then it will not show up. But I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Since I've used that hashtag, right? Click on Let's Build Daily, and we can see one, this is an opportunity to follow the hashtag. And we've got 10 followers. But then we can see when I'm sharing with other people, since up to this point, I haven't really had another repository for the content, another sacrifice I'm making by choosing to do it here. This is a way to, follow the show, click subscribe. But even there, we know how the algorithm works. And, a lot of times I know I miss posts that I would expect to see even when I said follow and show me their important posts. Doesn't always work the way you want it to. But this is also a URL that I have handy, right? Because I haven't built a show page or anything like that. Maybe we do that. I know that's how one thing that Kyle Jepson has had some success with, making the HubSpot tips and tricks page. So maybe we go there. It's definitely not the best way to, have people follow or re-engage later. But it's available, and it's one metric I do like to think about. But knowing that I don't say it at the end of the show, I don't, try too hard to drive it. I don't have any metrics expectations there. It's just cool to know, like a couple months ago, there was 0, followers, and now there's 10, including myself. So if we come back here, so why did I add the second hashtag? For the same reasons, where with this series, now I can share, specific posts from the show. And this tells me I haven't used the hashtag consistently because there's a couple missing. But now we have our event made in LinkedIn. Now we need, so LinkedIn does not do, it's not going to stream. It's not a streaming platform. So you need something else to help you, get the video up and get the show started. This is just a streaming endpoint, right? And the tool that I use is StreamYard. And let me actually see. I don't know if this is going to work well. right? So yeah, that should work. So here we have options, and just for reference, I'm using, I think the pro level. That's a couple $100 a year, because of what happens with the recordings, and I can get transcriptions. You can click on the past, right? So this is yesterday's. They're starting to get very Riverside-like in terms of they've added functionality to separate audio and video streams and from the different people and record locally versus in the cloud. See, this is why I think this is new. That scheduling post option, this wasn't really here. This is my first time seeing this option as well. So that's cool. And I think with some of this stuff, well, we have seen, social media take a step back occasionally. As you start to invest time and learn how this stuff works, if there really is, enough people having success with it and good results, I like to think this is the worst that it's ever going to be, right? It's going to get better, both from an execution standpoint in the process, less clunky, like scheduling, being able to schedule posts as an example, and just understanding that the platform wasn't originally built to do this. So that's where your feedback, I think you'll be surprised if you become an active, practitioner of the thing that they want people to use. They're going to listen a lot of times into feedback that you might have. So we're on this one right now, and clicking on live stream, because that's what we're doing tomorrow. Select destinations, use an existing LinkedIn event, and let's build happily with Mexico and use selected event and create live stream. Now we can enter studio, and just as an example, one thing I have to work on, and forgive here, but this is what we're looking at. And we've got comments here. Mobile comments don't come through. Good to see Joseph and John here today. Won't go through all the setup. I will hit this button that should have been on in the beginning. But we have some brand elements. This recording option is fairly new since they've gone the route of being able to manage recordings. And so I can't respond here, but I can do things like, show this and thank John directly for appreciating this overview of the process. We won't get into details of production value, but there are settings to manage, and of course audio video should be on point when you can make it on point. But again, I think in most cases, well, I guess it depends. Either people aren't thinking about it at all, and they definitely should not be doing this with the microphone that they have, or people overthink it, and we need to have all our ducks in a row and just overthink and overplan and over strategize before we even press play, right? Before you even understand, can I do this every day? Am I willing to do this every day? Am I going to bring passion? What am I going to talk about? Do I have the knowledge? Am I going to help anybody? Right? That's the kind of stuff that really matters. But that's for a different episode. So we're ready to go tomorrow. And I'll be honest, and the reason this has worked for me is that this process, I can do all this in a 5-minute period, And that's often how it happens, right? Some posts have gone out late, right? At like 8:45, and I'm starting at 9. And I, well, we could talk about how maybe not viable that is in the long run. Uh, but that's only possible because how easy these tools are to use once you have them set up. Um, and you can see here, I didn't have to do much because I'd already made the event in LinkedIn. So if not knowing how to use the tools is holding you back, like don't. Hopefully, this piece was helpful in showing you how easy it could be. There's not a ton of setup, beyond, getting your logo in here and some colors, right? So the other things that are cool that are starting. So if we look at the library, we've got, we can look at, they're starting to build in some, AI clips. Um, Download, export. You can actually share from here, which I've done a couple times in a pinch. I am going to be moving to, YouTube and the website. But again, this is where like half the battle is just picking the right tools and understanding how to use them. Because most people that are holding themselves back, I mean, the knowledge is in your head, the value is in your head. And if you can provide value during a one-on-one conversation, then you can do it on a stream like this, right? And then are we bringing value to one person, 10 people? Can we reuse it later, right? This is the thing where it's, especially as AI rolls in, like live content, interview content, that stuff is only going to increase in value. Because the authenticity, not only from like just the humanity side of it, right? If you actually want AI to better support you, especially when it comes to content creation, I was listening to a recent interview of Mark Schaefer on the Marketing Book podcast, and he said with his recent audiobook, it's almost 100% AI audio of him. And he can only do that because he's done a bunch of audiobooks. He's got a bunch of videos to feed it, and it's coming a long way. But if you expect to like choose some avatar that's not you and feed it some text, like that's just not going to work, right? Now you are setting yourself up to be, maybe replaced a little bit here. But again, if you're the one leading that charge and in charge of how that's happening, then you're much better off if you're holding back and not letting that stuff work for you, and maybe, letting a bad actor try to do it for you with their best interest in mind. So all these things, obviously I overthink a lot of this stuff. So that's why I don't want you to do it. But it's fun for me to think about. I haven't tested these features yet, but maybe in the future. So that is, that's how you get it off the ground. I will say, just to talk about, to bring it into HubSpot and to start using that object, went through, and that's actually a good place to start. Where do you get the metrics? What do they look like after? Right. So if I go, I think, if we go to events here, and got yesterday's, right, where I talked about association record property list cards. If you're in HubSpot and you haven't seen these yet, like get in there immediately, start playing with them. So so basically anything related to a usual post, we can see here. And they have made some updates again in the last week or two related to analytics, which is the main tab you're going to want to look at. Right. So again, I'm not doing it for the live. I'm not doing it for the live attendance. Anything is a bonus. But also, again, these total attendees is not, like usual for the webinar, for like a webinar, whereas you would expect this to correlate to, who's actually registered versus attendance. This is attendee, like webinars have registration lists, right? The actual attendance is here in that I had, 4 peak live viewers, right? That's the actual attendance, where this is the, hey, I see it beforehand and I'm going to click, that I want to attend. But it doesn't, that's what I mean by it doesn't really, like, first of all, it doesn't mean the same thing as it does with any other event that you're going to do, because it's actually more like a registration. But the fact that you can watch it without being registered, without clicking that button, is why, I don't really focus on that. So they've started bringing discovery in, and I used to have to go get this from the post and try to figure out a way to see the post outside of this spot, because in a usual, like if you were to look at your own post in the feeds, you would see impressions and engagement numbers there. So thankfully, they just brought this in, and we have our impressions and unique views. But this is a new interesting dynamic where we have 204 unique views versus 50 views here, 45 unique viewers, right? So basically 50 views versus 204 views. So this is where understanding, at least not necessarily how it works, but that these are related to the post. So the number of times your post was seen on LinkedIn. Unique views, the number of accounts that have seen your posts on LinkedIn, right? So this views is for the post. Right? The number of times your post was seen on LinkedIn versus the number of accounts that have seen your posts on LinkedIn, right? A difference of 140. Right? There's always a huge difference. Yeah, we won't go into that. So engagements, usual reactions, comments, reposts, and then video performance, right? This is where, again, this is distributing at different intervals for different people and audiences. So the goal, obviously, is to increase, you want it to increase over time. And I'm trying to think about ways to best track that, right? I'm bringing snapshots in, but this is where, like, since there's like a live component and a recorded component, and we're trying to measure that in the same place, it can be hard to really trend some of what's happened. That's where right now I'm just trying to track the data that I think is interesting. And then maybe in 6 months, I'll have enough data to do some, meaningful analysis. And this is where, like, if the right person likes it, if the right person engages, can dramatically impact some of this, right? But this is where I include a lot of qualitative feedback in my understanding of how this stuff is working. Like this number, is low right now, a day after maybe. But if I know 1 or 2 people watch the whole thing and they're in the ICP, then that was a successful venture. And my favorite thing about the stuff I've been doing with Max is, again, like, now that this is repurposable content, I can now share that content during the sales process or during, the prospecting process to help educate people on what HubSpot can do. In the case of Max, it's like, hey, event management, right? Doesn't have to be a scary thing. Here's a deep dive for me and Max. And in theory, that would also make this go up. So again, that's where it's a distribution mechanism at the same time. So if you were to do like a full-fledged campaign, similar to a webinar, let's say, you would be able to come in and see some correlation if there was a repurposing, promotion campaign after, right? And that's where you're making choices of, am I bringing people into here? Because then, maybe they engage in the comments, maybe they can reshare easily because they're more active on LinkedIn, or am I taking them to YouTube or to my website, right? Because I want to track it there, and I can get better video analytics if I do that, right? So these are all sacrifices. And for me, this wouldn't have happened at all. Like, a lot of people early on were asking me about YouTube. And I said, like, very honestly, if I would have added 5 more minutes to this process, I very likely would not have done anything at all. So it was like, what can MVP look like? And what's the minimum I can do to just start sharing knowledge with people? Because I know that they tell me, at least, that there's value when I do that, right? Probably want to do a different episode on the results, but just to show you, so we bring them in, via the spreadsheet, and that's where tracking these results and trying to, understand on some level what performance looks like. What's unfortunate is with this recent change, and this probably speaks to how valuable the information was in the first place, is they used to have a chart that would show you, over time, how many people were attending, right? And it was super interesting. There was a couple times where, a show I did with Adam Stahl, like on HubSpot Academy, we didn't, it was planned for 30 minutes. We went an hour. We had most of our engagement and viewers in the second half hour that was not scheduled or planned, right? Probably because at about the halfway mark, that's when LinkedIn decided to send out the notification that we were live, right? It certainly wasn't because we were so amazing, and although Adam is, but it's not like it had something to do with the viral nature of our content, and all of a sudden, like, we didn't have a lot of engagement. So clearly what mechanism is at play, the one that is the simplest explanation for me, is that's when the notification went out, right? Because all of a sudden, second half of the show that was not scheduled, right? So you overcome a lot, I think, knowing that that's happening and that could happening. It reduces some of the pressure, both for you and the people that you want to be watching this stuff. Like, since it's on here and they know they can get to it whenever, they don't have to wait for you to send the recording. It's available immediately, right? They can show up, 30 minutes late. They can show up an hour later knowing that they're going to catch the recording and they're not going to miss anything, right? And they can engage in the comments being made, right? So it's just a really powerful mechanism right now that if you can maybe get over a little apprehension about live, event um, execution. This can go a long way for you. And I haven't even gotten into the, I know a lot of people do some post production, put some thumbnails on here. Maybe I get to that, maybe I don't. That's when we get to discoverability and a focus on exposure versus is the content valuable, and can I share it with somebody to answer their question? If I can do that, then I don't need to worry about what the beginning and end looks like necessarily, because they want the content, they want the information, what's inside, right? So I'll have a part 2 with this, and of course bringing it out of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is notorious for not making the metrics easy to manage, but in most of the tools that I've seen, they're not really prepped for LinkedIn live metrics yet either. So that's why I have gone this route, and and I can start to play with understanding the metrics. And if I just do this real quick, this was the first one, and I actually haven't updated it in a while. But this HubSpot memberships was the day that Content Hub came out. And I got some specific engagement there from the HubSpot PM related to memberships, and he engaged, so that exposes it to more people. So there's a lot to learn here still, and but just to show how we might track over time, I'm gonna find this, right? And again, even for me, because LinkedIn is challenging to do this, and this is a good example of what happens with these theater links after the fact. Should bring me to the comments page, right? And this was my first show. And if we look at analytics, right, and we've got 393 views, minutes viewed, right? That's where, like, this is not super important. This is the stuff that you might want to see, grow over time. Tells you how valuable the content is. We've got 393 here and 383 here. So I'm going to update that. And then in theory, we could do some, we could check the history of this property if we're really interested or seen some spikes. But there's lots more we could do here. And I'm hopeful that just setting this up manually will help provide feedback, to both HubSpot and LinkedIn in terms of this is what we need these platforms to be able to do if we're going to use them to support. And with podcasts becoming a thing in HubSpot, like I'm basically managing this like a podcast, right? That's how I'm approaching it. We didn't get into the project management stuff, but we can set up, different pipelines. I'm going to bring some of the other podcasts, the other 2 podcasts in here, and then you can start to manage like guest coordination and things like that. So I think there's real opportunity here. And once the information's in the system, it can work a lot harder for you. So I think that's a good stopping point for today. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope this was helpful. And so like, please look at LinkedIn, you know, reach out if you need help setting it up. But find the opportunity. It's there for you in LinkedIn Live. And let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.